أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد الأئمة والمهديين وسلم تسليما. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, my dear brother and companion Muhammad.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, dear father.
Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me, dear father. Father, I wanted to ask you what the term the non-working scholar means.
Thank you for that question. That's a very important question. And so we have in the religion of Islam scholars, as there are in the religion of Christianity and Judaism and every religion. And we have in the narrations of Muhammad and the family of Muhammad this concept of there being good scholars and bad scholars, or working scholars, that their actions and their works match their words and the words of Muhammad and the family of Muhammad. And we have these non-working scholars that their words are sweet and they're saying the words and the teachings of Muhammad and the family of Muhammad, the words of the prophets and the messengers comes out of their mouths, but their actions, their fruits, their works does not match that. And so they are termed non-working scholars, or ulama ghair amilin, or ulama as-su, or evil scholars. And we have actually a plethora of narrations by Muhammad and the family of Muhammad that warn the believers of these non-working scholars, and they pinpoint the time of the Mahdi as being a time where you can almost trust no scholar of Islam at all. In fact, the narrations state that the scholars are the greatest enemies of the Muslims and of the Mahdi and of the family of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so there are narrations that state that there comes upon the Ummah a time in which nothing remains from Islam except for its name, meaning there's no Islam anymore. It's just the name of Islam that's there. And nothing remains of the Quran except for its calligraphy or its writing. And that the Muslims call themselves by that name, but they are the furthest thing from it. And then the narration says that their scholars are the most evil of creation underneath the sky. From them came the fitna, and to them it returns. And then the narration states, because they support the evil oppressors. Okay, yes. So now we have a reason why these scholars are so evil, and that is because they are basically supporting, enforcing the tyrants, the dictators. They act as enablers, handlers that allow the tyrants to control the Muslim nations. They're enablers of the tyrants and they're handlers of the Muslim population by using religion as a tool of oppression and repression, a tool of control, whereby they scare the masses and act as mouthpieces, not for God, but for the evil tyrant. The narrations also state that when the Mahdi comes, that he has no clearer enemy than the scholars of Islam. And this is a very important point, because a lot of scholars lie, and they, whether on the Sunni side or the Shia side or the Sufi side, and they give the impression that the way that the nation will know the Mahdi is when the scholars kind of are united in declaring that this individual is the Mahdi, when the narrations actually state the opposite. And that's why Imam Ahmad al-Hassan in one of his most important speeches, he says, did you ask Muhammad and the family of Muhammad about the scholars of the end times before you ask the scholars of the end times about Muhammad and the family of Muhammad? And so we see that actually the scholars do not unite on any Mahdi at all, because them uniting on a Mahdi means the end of their empire, right? The end of their little supermarkets and trade of religion that's going on, and they're profiting in the name of God, as did the rabbis and the Pharisees and the priests before. And it's also important to note that in the lives of all of the prophets and the messengers, there was never a time, there was never a prophet or a messenger that was basically supported by the scholars of that time. So the scholars always take the side of enmity. They're always against the divinely appointed prophet, messenger, imam of the time. This reality, this sad reality, can be no clearer than it is in the modern present day and age. And you have a narration from the Prophet Muhammad in which he states basically that if you see the scholar at the door of the king, meaning he's being controlled by the king, he's receiving a salary by the king, he's basically listening and supporting and enforcing whatever it is that the king wants to do, then say nay to the scholar and nay to the king. That's a sign that this is a non-working scholar. This is a scholar of the devil, of the false authorities, and not a scholar of God. But if you see the king going back to the religious scholars and asking for their advice and them being above him, then say yes, okay to the scholar and yes to the ruler. And so in modern days today, in the modern age today, all across the so-called Muslim countries, from Morocco or in the West, all the way to Iran and Iraq in the East, you find that each and every one of these governments have set up these kind of Wazarat al-Awqaf, is what they call them, right? Mm-hmm. Where they basically, these ministries of religion, so to speak, that controls and appoints the particular imams of the various masjids or mosques throughout the country, and they kind of supply them with the speeches that they're supposed to give, and the speeches are usually in support of the government and basically advocating the ruler and his agenda at the time. If the ruler is against, for example, Israel, you'll find that the preachers at the mosques are cursing Israel. If the ruler now wants to establish good ties with Israel, then you'll find those imams in the mosques forbidding and outlawing support for Palestine, or speaking out, for the Palestinian people, or speaking out against what's taking place in Gaza, in Palestine today. And that's exactly what we find taking place, for example, in countries such as Saudi Arabia, right? And you find them basically telling the people that they need to stay out of politics, that they need to support the ruler. They narrate certain traditions that basically enforce the authority and the power of the ruler. And of course, you know this because you've lived over there for a very long time, right?
Yes, Father, yeah.
Now, you're from Morocco.
Yes, Father.
Yeah?
Yeah.
And what did you find over there?
Same thing, Father. Non-working scholars, like you said, Wazarat al-Awqaf, and we can notice it even in the Jum'ah's prayer. They all have the same speech, whatever. It's like their rulers became the scholars of the nation, but not the scholars in reality. It's the rulers who actually guide the scholars into saying what they want. They say it's a fitna to come out and speak against the king. Whatever the king says or sees, they see it right at the same point of view as them. It's just oppression. There is no freedom of speech or freedom of belief. Like the king, the so-called king of Morocco, is just an evil king that is not appointed by God. That all the scholars became his mouthpiece and not God's mouthpiece, Father.
Okay. So we have a situation in Morocco today, which leads us into actually a question that we've received as well from various members of the audience on the Arabic-speaking side. They're asking about a particular figure that has arisen in Morocco, and he's began to appear a lot in social media. He's a Karkari guy.
Yes.
He's part of the master of al-Tariqa al-Karkariya, a Sufiya. He's a Sufi master, so to speak. And he has a video. Let's hear what he has to say in order that we can determine whether or not he is a righteous scholar or a non-righteous scholar. But what we have heard about him is that he basically travels travels around the countries. He calls people to this path of Sufism. It seems like he's kind of indicating, or people around him are implying, that he's the Mahdi, right? And he's basically taking also pledges of allegiance from the people. They're calling him the grandson of the Prophet Muhammad. We do know that he got... There's some videos that seem to show him being received in a gracious way in the kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and they offered him some relic of the Prophet Muhammad, allegedly, or something of the sort. So let's see this supposed grandson of the Prophet Muhammad, this alleged possible Mahdi character. Let's hear what he has to say before we judge him.
أما المغرب كدولة، هذا هو كوطن أولاً، نفتخر مرة أخرى لكوننا نحن يعني مملكة. يعني ما معنى مملكة؟ لدينا ملك سلطان، وهذا السلطان لا يتغير ولا يتبدل، رغم أنه إذا انتقل إلى الرحمن يستخلفه من هو من صلبه. يعني تبقى نسخة المملكة سارية هكذا، يرثها أبا عن جد، هكذا تسري أبا عن أب عن جد، وهي سائرة في هذا الأمر. فهذه تريح النفس، يعني نتقبل وطننا ونتقبل ملكنا كما هو، ونسري على نهجه ودربه وعلى رايته أبا عن جد. فتجد هذا تراث قديم ورثوه لنا الأجداد. النقطة الثالثة وهي أكبر، بأن المغرب من هو سلطانه ومن هو سيده ومن هو ملكه هو من آل بيت النبي عليه الصلاة والسلام، وهذه مفخرة. هذه مفخرة يعني، والرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول تركت فيكم كتاب الله وعطرة آل بيتي، يعني فيصبح العطرة عندك هي التي أنت تحت رايتها وتحت إمارتها. فنحن إذا قلنا ملكنا أمير المؤمنين من باب أنه من عطرة النبي عليه الصلاة والسلام، مفخرة لنا. إذن هذا البلد مجرد بهذه النفحات ألا تجده مباركا؟ هذا هو من رؤيتك لاسمه، من رؤيتك طبعا لملكه وسلطانه. هذا هو. زيادة على هذا المغرب بلد الأولياء.
Okay, so that was a quite interesting video. Yes, and I think that that one video tells us everything that we need to know about this particular individual. He's saying a lot of things that we have deep problems with, and we have deep problems with him. We oppose his words because of it does not go along with the words of Muhammad and the family of Muhammad. It's an impossibility that this sheikh have anything to do with the family of the Prophet Muhammad. What are the reasons why? The reasons why are because, one, the king of Morocco, he calls himself the Prince of the Believers. Okay? And we have specific narrations from Muhammad and the family of Muhammad that says that the title of Prince of the Believers is reserved for one person and one person alone, and that is Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, the best of all of the vicegerents, the best of all of the successors, the successor of the Prophet Muhammad. And that anybody who calls himself the Prince of the Believers or Amir al-Mu'mineen besides Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, this is an individual that you should know that he's false, and you should also know that he is actually somebody who practices certain things with men.
Yes.
Okay, this is what the narrations state, and they warn us of such individuals, and the narrations make it clear that they are imposters and they are actually the enemies of Muhammad and the family of Muhammad. So the person that he is calling towards, the king, is already somebody who is, we cannot associate them with the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. We cannot take them seriously. The second thing is that he justifies and says that it's a great blessing to have this king, and that this king is actually a part of Moroccan heritage. So like the pyramids is a heritage for the Egyptians, the royal family of Morocco these people that pillage and plunder all of the resources of the Moroccan people and oppress them greatly. He calls them a great heritage for the people, and that, you know, we should be very thankful to have them, and that it's having them is something which makes ourself or our nafs at peace. So I don't know where it is that he's getting that, except for the devil, or he's getting it from the people that are paying his paycheck, the government that is putting him and pushing him, you know, to give these sorts of speeches. But he also says that it is also suitable that this family be kings over us because they are descendants of the Prophet Muhammad. And there's a narration from the Ahl Bayt that says that the Prophet Muhammad, before he died, he said, I'm leaving with you two things and you need to hold on to them. And that is the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Quran, and my itra, Ahl Bayti, my family, my progeny, the family, the people of the house. This narration, the people of the house, is this reference, these words are referring to specific individuals from the family of Muhammad. Sunni and Shia sources both specify that it does not apply to all of the wives of the Prophet Muhammad. It actually doesn't apply to any of them. And Salama made this very clear in one of the narrations that she narrated. She said that the Ahlul Bayt is a term that only applied to Fatima al-Zahra alayhi salam, Imam al-Hassan, Imam al-Hussein, the two grandchildren of the Prophet Muhammad, the two children of Fatima al-Zahra, who was the daughter of the Prophet Muhammad. It also applies to the Prophet Muhammad himself and to his cousin, the husband of Fatima al-Zahra, Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. Those individuals are the Ahlul Bayt plus the imams that come out of the loins, the descendants, the successors of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, which are 9 imams that come out of Imam al-Hussein, starting with Zayn al-Abidin and ending with Imam al-Mahdi, and then Imam al-Mahdi's successors, the 12 Mahdis. This is the Ahlul Bayt, the individuals whom are infallible, that it is obligatory for us to follow and obey, because obedience to them would never lead us astray. Hence, the Prophet Muhammad makes it clear. He says, I'm leaving behind for you 2 things to hold on to, the Quran and my Ahlul Bayt, because the Quran is of no use without the Ahlul Bayt, because the Ahlul Bayt are infallible interpreters and guides for the nation that are obligatory for an individual to follow, right? Just like it was obligatory for the nation to follow Muhammad, the same things apply to these individuals. Hence, before the Prophet passes away, he stands in front of 70,000 believers. He holds up the hand of Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, and he says, whoever I'm the master of, Ali is his master, right? So he says that all of the knowledge, everything that applies to him, also applies to his household. Now, this scholar is trying to pull a swift one, and he's taking what belongs to the men of God and the woman of God, Fatima al-Zahra, and he wants to apply it to these individuals, this filthy king and his family in Morocco. And because he attempted to do that, then by the narrations of Muhammad and the family of Muhammad, this would automatically put this scholar under the curse of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and would actually take him outside of the fold of Islam altogether. So it's not that he wouldn't be the Mahdi, like he's not even a Muslim actually. He's actually one of the worst creatures underneath the sky. The narration of Muhammad and the family of Muhammad say about certain scholars like this one that the Prophet said that he's more afraid over his nation from scholars like this than he is from the fitna of the Dajjal or the armies of Yazid, the son of Muawiyah. That's how dangerous scholars like this are. And so, yeah, it's such a great shame, because individuals like this, they walk around with patched clothing. They teach the opposite of what the Prophet and his family taught. They steal that which belongs to the Prophet and the family of the Prophet. They want the allegiance of the people to go away from Imam al-Mahdi and to go towards somebody like the king who calls himself the prince of the believers in Morocco. It's such a tragedy.
لعنة الله عليهم.
لعنة الله عليهم.
الشعب المغرب إمتى غادي تفيقوا من هاد الغيبوبة اللي انتم فيها؟ الإمام مهدي ظهر ويدعوكم للوصية رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم: العاصمة من الضلال الذي إذا تمسكتم بها لن تضلوا أبدا. وما خباو عليكم الوصية. علاش باش يكذبوا عليكم بهاد الملوك ديال والو ديال آخر الزمان. نتوما كلكم عارفين هاد حسن، هاد محمد السادس كيدير، معروف عالميا، كيسمي راسو أمير المؤمنين، يكذب عليكم في لي سبيتش ديالو، يقول لكم قال جدي رسول الله. كذوب في كذوب. المهدي ها هو هنا.
God bless you. Salam Allah alayk and thank you.
Thank you, Father.
God bless you. Salam alaikum.
Salam الله وبركاته.
Thank you, Muhammad.